Great. Thanks everyone for participating today, and I'm glad to see you all recaffeinated and ready for the second half of the morning. Again, my name's Alan Percy. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing for Audiocodes. We're a 600 and some odd employee company based in Israel, focused on enabling technology for voice over IP, and certainly a big piece of the unified communication solution. So I brought a couple things that I want to share with you. First of all, a lot of the perceptions of what Audiocodes does in the marketplace is because of our relationship with some of the key software vendors. And what I wanted to share with this slide is this is sort of a perception versus reality thing. What people know us for is for integrating these different software applications. Certainly our relationship with Avaya, we've got a long-standing OEM relationship through Nortel and with Avaya, with their Aura platform integrating our large media gateways to TDM trunking. Our relationship with Microsoft, which I'm going to spend just a moment on in the next slide, but other vendors too, BroadSoft, IBM, Digium, Interactive, et cetera, et cetera. These are all software applications that are part of the UC ecosystem, and our role is to integrate these solutions to the outside world. You know, a software application is no good unless it can communicate with somebody outside the business. And a couple different mechanisms. One of them is certainly our media gateways for connecting these software applications to TDM trunking, our enterprise session border controllers to integrate into SIP trunking and integrate other SIP systems together, and then our hybrid platforms, which are a combination of our TDM trunking or TDM gateway functionality plus the enterprise session border controller in a single device, providing integrations, for example, into existing IP PBXs or TDM PBXs for UC platforms. So this is what folks know us for. What I wanted to spend a moment on is just talk about the things that we do specifically for Microsoft. And this is one of our deepest, most comprehensive relationships, but a lot of this functionality we do for others too as part of the solution. So it starts with these TDM gateways. Again, providing that connectivity to the public network. Certainly, businesses want to be able to make telephone calls in and out of Microsoft Link or voice-enabled link. Also to SIP trunking, providing both the interoperability and also the security necessary to integrate solutions like Microsoft Link into SIP trunking providers. We also provide the integrations you heard earlier in the session from Marty about the power of integration that Octel had with being able to integrate their messaging platform into existing PBXs, and this continues to be a big role. As you will learn, I'm sure, as you work through the process with a number of end users, is that unplugging from that PBX is not something that they're often real eager to do right away. They want a hybrid solution that allows them to voice-enable link, but continue to use their existing PBX, and that integration is a big part of our experience. Also, to integrating in non-certified IP PBXs. You certainly in your consulting process will run into IP PBXs that are older, that would need either major upgrades or are not integrated in with Link. And you'll need a way to resolve some of the interoperability issues. This is a key area that our enterprise session border controllers can do with their back-to-back user agent features. We can resolve some of those interoperability issues. Also, too, businesses still have analog devices. Whether it be the phone in the elevator or I call it the lunchroom in the lobby. There's places where analog phones continue to play a role in business, and integrating them into the Microsoft Link environment or into the UC solutions is a very common application. Other areas that are sort of interesting, one of the things we discovered in our early rollouts with Microsoft was the need to integrate in existing SIP phones. There are SIP phones that were bought within the last couple of years. They're not amortized. They spend a lot of money on those SIP phones, and when the Microsoft sales team goes in and says, hey, we're going to replace all this, they get this weird pushback, and the issue is that they spent all this money on these devices and they want to continue to use them, but they're not Link certified phones. So we've got a software kit that allows the integration between these third-party existing IP phones and using UCMA to integrate into the Microsoft Link environment. So sort of, again, an integration challenge. Other areas too is we've also got a mobile client based on our VMAS mobile client called Mobility Plus, and this is a voice-enabled mobile client, which is different than the Microsoft mobile client. And this allows the voice to go over Wi-Fi, which is important for certain enterprise applications, large warehouses and other areas, campuses. They want to move their voice traffic off the cellular network onto their Wi-Fi network. We also have new call recording logging technology. This is something that was just recently certified, called SmartTab, and this allows legal, healthcare, other verticals that need 100% compliance to be able to do call recording and logging 100% of the time in a passive fashion, so that the end user is unaware of their quality. And also, last but not least, of course, the survivability with our survivable branch appliances and other configurations for those branch offices that need continuation. So, at a quick overview, these are some of the solutions, and we'll certainly be covering these in much more detail in our breakout session, and look forward to sharing some thoughts with you as we go on today. So.
Great, thanks, Alan. So Kevin, we'll turn it over to you and a little bit of background about what NET's up to.
Sure, thanks Jim. So NET is basically a company based in the San Francisco Bay Area. So we're approximately 160 employees. So we're quite a bit smaller than Audiocodes, but we're very focused on providing solutions for predominantly Microsoft Link, but also for other verticals within the unified communications. So the devices we make are very targeted at hooking up and causing interoperability to work between either your existing PBXs, IPPBXs, UC solutions, devices, making them all work together. So as Jim indicated, we are fierce competitors. But
good friends.
But good friends, yes. Exactly. So we can get up on stage and still behave, so that's a good thing. But effectively, if you have a look at how communications are actually coming together, one of the things that we find is people are now looking at how can you actually put UC and deploy UC. Before it was, how can I trial UC? So we're really seeing the deployments actually change, right? And one of the things that truly is coming of age, rather, is the enterprise voice side of Link. So we're starting to see a lot more deployments actually taking place on it. And people are really going, yes, this is real, we can use this, we can actually go and actually displace the PBX, we can really run a full company and do a full enterprise deployment, regardless of the type of company, whether it be a contact center with an add-on piece or all the other pieces. Link truly has come of age. I will not steal any of Microsoft's thunder though on that one, since we're basically here to focus on it. Where do we play? We're effectively the device that sits hooking up all the different aspects of the enterprise communication over to the Link environment. We're the glue, per se. So what we really allow the system to do is actually glue Link into your SIP trunks, your PSTN providers, your existing PBX, your analog endpoints, as Alan was mentioning. Like it or not, fax machines are not going away. They're one of those things that I personally love to hate, because they cause a lot of trouble, but at the same time, they mean you need lots of analog lines, right? You do get SIP-based fax machines, but they are fairly rare and fairly expensive. It's a lot cheaper to go down to Walmart and get just a regular old fax machine. So analog devices are very around to see for that side of it. We also have analog phones for things like overhead paging systems, entry doors, hardened devices, out on things like oil rigs, you'll have safety phones. Those are many analog things. And one of the problems that we've seen in these deployments is all these things are taken for granted in the PBX. The PBX, especially on the analog side, has been doing this for decades. So they don't think, when am I going to go out and how am I going to turn this up? What am I going to do about the lightning arresters and all that? It just worked. So now that you're moving across to a newer UC environment, you have to solve all these problems. And really that's where we come in. We stitch this all together. We allow this drop-in connection, so we can actually truly drop the device in. And the devices are designed to be dropped in at both the enterprise headquarters and also, very importantly, at the branch offices. So if you actually look at how it works in the branch office, we do have a number of other product lines at NET, but I'm going to focus today basically on the UX series, which is our newest product line. It was released approximately 18 months ago, and is really designed, purpose-built for the Link environment. And it is a true integrated appliance. It really shines in the branch. And what that means is we have this single user interface to allow you to configure, you hook it up to one thing. It acts as a true appliance, right? As consultants and integrators, you can't be running out and patching every time there's a new update. You need something that you can put in the closet, power it up, and off it runs, right? And that's really what we talk about with a true appliance. We've gone through, certified it, secured with Viacom, made sure that it's really a secure device. It really needs to plug in and become that true plug-in appliance. It's also designed really to perform and scale and hook all the different pieces together. So hopefully that gives you a very high-level, basic view of what the devices do. We do also have the ability to hook up those SIP phones that, let's say somebody's gone and invested, as Alan was mentioning, they've gone and invested, we do have the ability to hook them up to the UX or to our product called Smart SIP. Either one, you can hook it up and provide a similar transition point. We do find that that really is just a transition point. Most people would start off going that way and then move over to having more of a full deployment. It's not something that you stay on all the time. It really fits into that part. And lastly, before I turn it back over to Jim, I just wanted to mention on this survivable branch appliance, that's effectively providing branch survivability regardless of what actually happens to the connectivity at the site. Right? As good as try and have connectivity, if you lose connectivity, you don't want to lose your voicemail and your voice connectivity and all your voice calls, basically. So as part of there's a new program now called SPAV2, which allows us to virtualize applications on the UX device. So you can do things like WAN optimization and call center and mobile clients, servers, etc., all running on the same device, which of course is very attractive for a one-box branch solution. So
Great.
hopefully that sums it up.
Thank you, Kevin. So as we get into some questions that I know I look at somewhat regularly, just thinking about the two companies and the product portfolios. Alan, you've got a broader product portfolio than just about anybody in the market when it comes to helping with these things. And I know you've got some enterprise solutions that you've come up with, and you've also got a session border controller, as both of you do. And I think that's an area that people get confused about a little bit, about when do I need a session border controller? Because some people think, if it's a SIP world, I don't need one. And there are competitors of yours in the market who are preaching that. So maybe you can set the record straight here for everyone.
Yeah, so the evolution of SIP, I think, is important to understand. First of all, I think most of you folks know, it's based in RFC 3261, and if you've ever had a late evening where you couldn't get to sleep and had an opportunity to read the RFC, you would realize that there is plenty of room for, shall we say, creative development, all right? And yes, and exactly. So it's not a set in stone specification like the old ITU recommendations that we were used to. In the telecom business, they came up with PRI specification for ISDN NI2. It was pretty fixed. It was hard to make any modifications to that. But one of the beauties of SIP certainly is the fact that it's open and there's plenty of room for extensions and additions. And the only downside is, of course, people use that and they've created a number of modifications to it. So there are many applications, and perfect examples are many of the SIP trunking providers chose certain soft switches to run their network and made some decisions about how to use SIP. And certainly Microsoft and then the other UC players implemented their own versions of SIP, all within the specification 3261, but they're not necessarily made the same choices. And as a result, somebody needs to resolve these incompatibilities between the two. And this arises most often in integrating SIP trunking into UC applications, or as we mentioned earlier about SIP phones, for example, from one vendor into other applications. So a key role for the enterprise session border control, the primary role that we see, is resolving interoperability. It's also a very good place to address some security issues too. And it plays a critical, pivotal, central role in a large enterprise deployment because it's essentially sort of the crossroads of a lot of the SIP traffic inside of an architecture. If you were to envision many of the network diagrams, that there's invariably some point where an enterprise has brand A, maybe contact center, brand B, IPPBX, and maybe the branch offices have a different flavor, a different version, and somehow these systems all need to interoperate between each other as they move to SIP, and this is the key role that the enterprise session border controllers play, and which is why we're talking about it today as being a strategic investment, is realizing that you're going to need this crossroad. You're going to need to be able to integrate in other manufacturer SIP systems or SIP trunking, and you want to have control over that. So putting an enterprise session border control as part of your strategy, we think is important, and hopefully give you a little bit of that background why we think it is.
Kevin?
Yeah, I agree 100% with Alan. The the primary responsibility of the enterprise session border controller is to fix, they call it protocol repair per the SBC RFC, which is also a fun read, by the way, because it came about after the SBCs existed. But protocol repair is a very big part of it. That security demarc, another very important part too, in both the NET and Audiocodes SBCs feature that we're very much any-to-any devices. We're not just a pure SIP device. We also support the TDM interfaces to hook up to those good old, plain old analog lines, which when you're out at it's wonderful when we're in the US and we have, SIP trunks everywhere and you deliver it into a data center, but the minute that you decide you're going to put one out in an office of Mauritania or something, you're going to battle to get a SIP trunk. And being able to hook up those analog devices and analog lines, especially to that same device, not to have multiple devices sitting out, is very important as well. So you can have the SIP trunk running as your primary and then have analog as backup, all on the same thing. And it gives you a nice seamless experience. And at the same time, keeping it very secure, right? We all love the carriers are great, but do you trust the carrier? Are you sure that the carrier is going to be able to keep that pipe coming in? Do you really want to put the SIP trunk inside your network, hook it to a domain join server or anything like that? That's something you have to ask yourself. How important is your security? A lot of enterprises will put up a lot of advanced equipment in their DMZ to provide that security, and then just hook the voice SIP trunk directly in. And I'm not saying there's been any major exploits up until now that way, but you can imagine it as basically like taking an internet pipe and hooking it behind your firewall. Would you do that? Yeah, I don't know. It's not something that I would think of doing.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. The next area that I wanted to get into, and I brought it up yesterday in my presentation about how these survivable branch appliances that you both have mentioned as products that you have to offer, but how they're going to play an important role in the cloud solution. It gets back to there is equipment at the CPE in any cloud solution. Not everything's up in the cloud. So, Kevin, why don't we start with you and give us your thoughts on that and how you see it rolling out?
Sure. So, that's very, very true. The cloud is effectively infallible, right? That's the concept behind the cloud. We're not going to debate that side of it, hopefully. But basically, the cloud is a very robust infrastructure. Part of the problem, though, is the connection from the cloud to the enterprise, is not hacksaw or backhoe-proof, for one thing. So having some form of device at the enterprise is one way of guaranteeing that you still have connectivity, whether it falls back to a 3G connection or has local survivability like the SBA. So the SBA is providing that local full control. The big thing of going to the cloud is you want to make sure that from an operational perspective, you don't have something to maintain, right? People don't go, oh, I really hate that box sitting in the closet. Right? As long as the box works, I don't have to touch it. They're okay with the box. The problem is if you have to, have maintenance on the box, constantly upgrade the box, that's a problem. But just like in the old days where you would have a CSU, DSU sitting out at the enterprise prem, that's not really going away with the SIP trunk. It's just evolving now to an enterprise SBC, or more importantly, an SBA, if you're in the link environment and you want to be able to have that survivability. So now you can have that, still have that full connectivity, still be able to use everything, even if you lose connectivity. The cloud's still up, but you're still able to have that connectivity down on the enterprise's premise, basically.
Yes, interesting couple of customer case studies that reinforce what Kevin's talking about for the survivable branch appliances. We sell a generic concept of a survivable appliance that is used often, for example, in a Avaya infrastructure where they want to be able to put a simple SIP proxy out at the remote. So different businesses have different requirements for survivability. Some say, I just want basic phone-to-phone calling to work. Others say, I want more advanced features, for example, messaging to continue to work, and presence to work within the branch. Different architectures for different customers. And this is part of the response that you're developing for your end customers, is helping them understand, what's a good fit. Microsoft has chosen we think is a good sort of balance point with a survivable branch appliance that gives them the opportunity to put significant functionality out of the branch. But we also discover businesses that say, well, outages are not that critical to me, so I want to back off and do something much simpler. Others say, for example, one of our university end customers basically said, I want a complete link pool at each one of my campuses, the remote campuses. So they implemented a full mesh of link servers at each one of their 6 campuses to allow them to be able to survive, you know, any outage that might happen. So really, the businesses, when you're consulting with them and you're working with them, they have to choose on their own based on their budget and their ability to, there's concerns about survivability. Is which one of these points? Is it full link pool at each site? Is it maybe survivable branch appliances for maybe some of the sites, but link pools at the others? Or do I go to something very simple, like a little SIP proxy at each branch, or is there no survivability? So that's, again, a decision you're gonna be guiding those folks through, and you need to know what choices you have at your fingertips.
It really depends on the kind of business they're in, whether they would require that full survivability or not. Right? Sometimes you'll be in a case where they just go, I can use my cell phone when it's out. In other line of businesses, those incoming calls are their life, right? If they can't have incoming calls, they're not going to be able to be reachable. And you know, having a message saying, sorry, you know, the number you've dialed is no longer connected when you call a company is sometimes seen as a bad thing. So it really just depends on how important those phone calls are to the company. And that really, as Alan mentioned, depends on their line of business. One of the great things that Microsoft has done with the SBA v2, which is the latest version of the survivable branch appliance, is allow the price of the devices to come down quite considerably. So now it is actually affordable to be able to put one of these at almost every branch, whereas before you did have to choose, you know, well, I don't really want to spend that much for it. So the price has come down a lot, which has helped it. It also, the functionality has gone up as well with the virtualization that I was mentioning earlier. So now you can do things like, you can have a bandwidth optimization solution running on it, which is very attractive. You can imagine you have, I'll use Mauritania again because I know the connectivity is so poor. And when you, if you've ever been there, when you run a connection back from there, having bandwidth optimization, your WAN optimization is critical otherwise. And we have partners that will run WAN optimization on the SBA. And now you have a good experience when you open your email instead of actually, you know, waiting for everything to be queued back and forth. All the TCP connections done locally, the images are cached, all that kind of stuff. To, you know, you've heard of Riverbed and Blue Coat, etc. That concept, but running on the same device, and that really makes it a far more integrated, working regardless of your network connectivity. So network connectivity is really not ubiquitous. Actually, this hotel I think is probably the best internet I think I've had in a long time. Because hotel internet is normally the acid test of poor internet.
You're having all these techniques here, right?
Yeah, exactly. Full overload.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, great. I'm going to go ahead and call up our next speaker, Walt. Walt Smith is with Plantronics, and I've asked Walt to give us a little bit of background. It's kind of interesting. We all know who Plantronics is, but you want to take the seat over to the other? And give us a little bit of background. The purpose of this part of the session is to talk to you about why it's important to make certain procurements earlier in the process than what's happened. We're going to let Walt give us a little bit of background. I'll start asking the questions of these two gentlemen, and then we'll turn back to Walt before we open up to questions.
Okay, good. Is this on? Good morning. Happy to be here. I ran into some old friends and hopefully made some new ones today. I was saying, what's a marketing guy doing at a UC conference? Well, actually, a little bit of background on me. I actually started and managed our global Microsoft Link practice for a few years. And now I run our channel partner and SMB programs. My team supports our strategic partners as well as our channels, with particular emphasis on our solution providers. What's going on at Plantronics? Well, a lot of things. First of all, we're very pleased that we survived 50 years. We celebrated our 50th anniversary last year, and in today's world, that's a major accomplishment. If you look back at the Fortune 100 list 50 years ago, you'd be amazed at what you saw compared to today. We have jumped into the UC business full bore. We have committed resources personnel-wise in terms of products. We developed our UC toolkit. I don't know whether you're familiar with it or not, but it's a fantastic tool to help assist you with deployments. There's over 300 documents in there, anything from helping you figure out the density of wireless in your building to customize materials, both training videos as well as documentation to help your people when they deploy. Our products, I talk to people all over the world, and one thing I always say, we love your stuff, and we appreciate that. We're known for quality, we're known for our tremendous audio, and for a large variety of products. But we're adding something else to it now, and this is, please, I'm going to ask for an embargo on tweeting and also blogging until Wednesday, or the CEO is going to shoot me, because we're going to make a major announcement on Wednesday. This is the Voyager Pro UC, which is one of the biggest selling UC products. I see people shaking their heads. Well, what's interesting about this is that you may or may not know it, but there's sensors in here. We've patented a system of sensors that we're going to be putting in every one of our UC products. It has a lot of intelligence that we can do with this. And what we're doing with it right now is when I put it on my head, it'll answer a call automatically. I take it off, it'll transfer it back to my cell phone or to my laptop. Now if you combine software with this, you have a whole new game. We believe that this is going to be a game changer not only for Plantronics but for the industry. For example, let's say what if I walk 30 feet from my computer, it automatically locks it down. Or it knows distances. It knows where I'm at my computer or I'm away from it. And somebody sends me an instant message. Maybe it'll say, you have an instant message. Or maybe even better yet, it'll go from text to speech. Or let's say I'm an attorney and I identify the customer that's calling me, I put on the headset, it automatically starts the billing. You take it off, it stops the billing. So these are just some of the ideas that, you know, we can combine the software with this, and we're going to put this in every one of our products. And we basically just reintroduced our whole wireless product line with some really cool stuff. And but then this is something that will be announced on Wednesday, and exactly how we're going to do all this. But we're really excited about it. We've already had some people writing software for this, and there's some pretty interesting things that you can do with it. So not only is this going to be a great audio device, but it's also going to contain some contextual intelligence that you can use for a lot of different things. So that's my opening remarks, Jim.
Great, thanks, Walt. Well, getting into some of the decision process of when do you make a decision to acquire a gateway. I'm not going to embarrass these two gentlemen by giving you the horror stories of people who had tremendous problems with cutover because their gateway wasn't configured properly. And quite frankly, it's not because the gateway doesn't do what it was delivered to do. It's because there was a big delay between when someone said, oh, yeah, let's make this decision to buy this gateway at this time, and let's go plug it in, because we know this is a good vendor and the product works. So I'm going to turn it over to Al and then follow up, Kevin, with you. Just why you need to consider this early, why it needs to be part of that. By the way, UC Strategies is developing a white paper on this. We'll get it out to distribution sometime in the next month probably. But we believe it's a critical part, and one of those things that we think that we as UC Strategies can help educate you, not only the people who are doing the implementation, but the consultants who are helping make these recommendations. So.
Yeah, a key thing that we wanted to talk about today, and part of the reason we brought this subject up as a suggestion for a session was, there's the reactive purchase of a media gateway, for example. Then there's the strategic vision of where am I taking my UC roadmap. There's a big difference between those two. And it's not uncommon for people to put themselves in a reactive purchase mode instead of a strategic vision. So what's the strategic vision? The strategic vision is working with your customers to develop a strategy to move them from where they are today to where they want to be, a full UC platform down the road with mobility and presence and obviously voice enabled, maybe even Wi-Fi voice. The trick is how do you get from where they are today and where do they want to be down the road, and that's of course where your guidance comes in. And we've addressed this with a program that we've put together, a webinar series and some white papers and blogs to give this migration into what we think are 8 simple sort of steps. And we're about halfway through this webinar series right now. You can find it on audiocodes.com/UC-migration-series. And the idea of this series is to help our channel partners and our end customers start to envision, okay, I need to start with the endpoint in sight and then work our way back, right? So envision how the business is going to work way down the future, then work yourself back, and then develop a plan, a strategy to get them from point A to point, to their endpoint. Just purchasing a gateway solves your immediate problem today, but building a network design that helps you start with a gateway today, but then add ESPC functionality later, then add mobility, then add maybe network management, maybe survivability, and other functions to help them take down the path is critical. So that's why we think it's important for you to have the endpoint clear to the end customer, and then start to walk them through this process of making this migration, because most businesses, again, they're not flash cuts over to UC. They're usually looking for some bite-sized steps to help them with this this migration, and you can certainly make a significant improvement in your chances of success if you take a big picture in mind and lay it out in a series of steps.
Yeah, exactly. Our deployments, I think, probably speak best as to how people actually tend to deploy, like Link, for example. Generally speaking, very few people will actually just roll out Link without having some form of other UC implementation or IPPBX or PBX there beforehand. I think probably 1-2% fall under that category. And normally, it's because it's a greenfield office. Right? They're literally going, oh, I'm opening this office, I really want to avoid putting in 2 sets of infrastructure, I'm just going to drop it in and go. And when I say 2 sets of infrastructure, I don't mean no separate VLANs or anything like that. As we've seen with IPPBX, as they kind of evolved, we still had 2 jacks. So they didn't want to roll desk phones, they did a greenfield infrastructure roll. That's the simple case. Those are really easy to plan, as Alan was saying. There's a simple planning phase there. Most of the implementations tend to be migrations. So you have to get people through the concept of their desk phones going away, right? Even though most people, once they use it, will just automatically stop using the desk phone. The initial reaction is, no, I want to use it. I like the speaker phone, whatever it is. They like the desk phone experience. So they think they do anyway. So they start off there and they slowly move away. Now, what's very important is spec it in that gateway. As we mentioned, there's a lot of protocol repair that goes in. That means there's a lot of different configurations and settings. So you need to find out all that information about that PBX. You need to find out all the information about PSTN. The more information you have, the better your rollout happens. We've had many cases where it's gone, oh, it's 5 p.m. Pacific time on a Friday. Can we really get a gateway by Monday? Because we just realized that we've got a bunch of analog devices and we need to hook to this PBX, it needs to have this configuration, and whoops, we forgot that card. This is the kind of stuff that happens, as Jim said, the horror stories when you leave it to the last minute. The better you prepare up front, so the more information you can gather about that, it becomes very easy. It becomes a drop-in. You literally drop the device in, you can use the same lines you have, you can do things like Active Directory integration to slowly move users over to the UC implementation when they're ready. It makes a very smooth migration. We have great experience, provided it's planned. And if it's not planned, it can be an absolute disaster, because then it becomes, oh, I'm not sure if I need the overlap sending here, and we all remember those old terms. And they still very much apply when you're starting to make this all work together. So plan it up front early, and then it'll be a much, much simpler experience. You'll be able to plan out how many analog extensions, and that still blows my mind how many some people have, in the thousands, and there's only 500 people in the office, stuff like that.
So the reason I wanted Walt to participate in this session is I had an interesting conversation with Plantronics CEO Ken Canapon, and he was expressing this frustration about why people made the decision at the very last minute to purchase a headset. And my first thought was, well, so what? Who cares? I mean, it's just a headset. And then I started realizing, no, it really isn't. There are some reasons that you should be earlier, so I thought this would be a great opportunity for Plantronics to explain that position.
Thank you, Jim. Well, I can tell you some real horror stories, and I can tell you some real success stories. But basically, one of the things we learned with this whole UC thing is we're in the cosmetics business as much as anything. And you've got to look cool as well as have something that's comfortable, and you got to be able to hear and be heard. And I'll relate a story that's absolutely hysterical in a way, but I think our CEO, Ken Canapon, almost fainted, but we have a very enterprising sales guy who was sitting in front of a CTO of a Fortune 500 company, and the CTO was expounding on the fact that he was going to go cheap and he was going to give everybody basically the same thing. The sales guy looked at him and said, do you want 10,000 people calling you, telling you they don't like their headset? The guy said, oh my God, no. He said, well, here's what we have to offer. One of the things that we've learned is this. if you don't get the expectations set right, you're gonna have a lot of problems. Because the IT manager or the CTO who convinces the CEO, he's going UC, and you're gonna change the behavior of people, and if they don't use it, you've just wasted a lot of money, and that's part of the problem. So one of the things that we've learned is the reason the whole UC toolkit came about was because of a couple of companies said to us, God, we really appreciate what you did for us. We went in early. In some cases, we'd even get control groups. Let's face it, you know who runs companies? It's admins, right? So you get the admin council together and say, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna have people no longer doing this, okay? They're gonna be having to wear a device, they're gonna have to change their behavior. So what you do is you get a control group, and you get people who are thought leaders, and you give them choices of what the device is. That's one way of doing it. The other thing you should do is understand the use cases within the company. You don't want to give somebody a cheap wired headset that's going to be a mobile employee who needs to be on the phone 8 hours a day and be mobile and maybe going 350 feet with a wireless DEC product. So it's extremely important that you get in up front and understand and set the conditions. Understand, so that if you do that, it's much easier to change the behavior. And we have a lot of case studies on this, I guarantee you. One case, I'll be real brief and be on this one. Major company up in the Northwest, it's not Boeing, okay? But we went in there and it was going to do a deployment. So they were doing some pilots, proof of concepts. I went in later and I said, well, how'd it go? I said, this group went great, this guy's didn't. I said, what happened? We set up a control group and we explained to them what it is we're going to do and how your behavior is going to change and you're going to love it. And you know what? They loved it. The other group, they went in and said, here's your headsets, and left. They didn't like it, okay? Because their behavior was being changed and nobody set the expectations on it. So it really is extremely important to get in there early, give people choices based on what they do, and help set the expectations, and use our UC toolkit, it'll really help you.
Great, thanks, Walt. We have time for a couple of questions, and are there any questions from the audience? No problem if we don't. Samantha?